Good morning, Paul. It's Friday, the 20th of January. Here's the heads up brief for today. For the Southeast Asia production, we covered 20 issues. In North Asia, we covered 7 issues. And for the Australasia and Pacific Islands, we covered 6. In South Asia, we covered 17 issues, plus the major issues in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
In Papua New Guinea, landowners of the Ramu Nickel and Cobalt project in Madang are complaining that the government is not dealing with them properly and not upholding old agreements.
Look, ultimately, the PNG government's ability to govern at some point is going to be overrun, whether it's this existing government, a few years, a couple of decades away. Ultimately, there's going to be complete and utter mayhem. The narcissistic nature of the governance there is such that ultimately, even though there's literally hundreds of various language groups and tribes, at some point enough will muster some unity and change the nature of PNG as we see it. Thanks. Go ahead.
Right. In Taiwan, the Prime Minister and his cabinet submitted their resignations yesterday. They're part of the Democratic Progressive Party, which suffered major losses in the local elections in late 2022. It had campaigned on a mainly anti-China stance at that time.
Yes, and I think, look, that along with them encouraging the West to speak outwardly against a power like China, which is simply not going to change its mind, has led to their undoing. Their own naivety and actions have basically led their fate to be what it is, and hopefully that will ultimately see a more balanced view come into power in Taiwan. Hopefully that will include some liaison with the West that tells it to back off to its own backyards and worry about their very, very considerable number of faults. And thanks for the heads up on it. I wasn't aware.
Right. In Indonesia, the Corruption Eradication Commission is investigating Supreme Court judges for suspected graft. I'll get details on what the case is yet. They haven't released many thus far.
Okay, great. Look, I look forward to seeing that next week. One of the great problems in Indonesia is, of course, the lack of separation of the powers, which is all, of course, a part of the insidious corruption. And what makes it worse is the complete disregard and selfishness with which most lawmakers act, where they only look after the power brokers in their party. And between the public service, the political parties, and the politicians themselves, there's an incredibly selfish greed that impacts very poorly upon at least another 255 million citizens. So at some point again, Indonesia, though its democracy is maturing, the separations of legal power and the amount of corruption means that at some point in the future, there's probably going to be a rebalance from the wider community. At this stage, it's only the unions and students that are pushing back, but at some point, even that disregard of the spreading of funds, a total disregard for the people of the nation, that's not going to go without an ensuing reaction. Thanks, Uday.
Thanks, Paul, for that. Moving over to Thailand, Prime Minister Prayut will take part in a pre-election campaign event for the United Thai Nation Party in Chumphon on the 26th of January. He will be touring Thailand over the coming weeks to raise support for himself and his party in the upcoming elections.
Okay, that's interesting. I might try and get down to Chumphon. It's only about a 4-hour drive from where I am and have a look. We'll see. Thanks for that.
Right. In Pakistan, political tensions are escalating in Sindh over the local government elections in Karachi and Hyderabad. Those had taken place on the 15th of January, and nearly all parties except the ruling party have leveled accusations of vote rigging and irregularities in the elections.
Well, you'd have to expect that, given they basically tried to assassinate Imran Khan to remove the most credible threat against them in terms of political power. It's another sad reflection on the governance in Pakistan. Let's keep a really close eye on that. Obviously, both cities have a presence by our clients. We need to be really vigilant on what's occurring there. Thanks.
Well, yep. In Sri Lanka, police have announced that it will provide armed security to members of the election commission. Some members have recently received threats. Sri Lanka is preparing for the local government elections. The nominations are currently underway.
Yeah, it's sad that the police would actually feel obliged. They'd have to say that they would provide such protection. Nevertheless, thanks for the briefing.
Moving over to the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. So, Paul, as per estimates, 1 to 2 million people protested in France yesterday against the pension reform bill. Clashes broke out in Paris. Fuel shipments were blocked to refineries, and unions have called for another round of protests on 31st of January. French authorities are planning to pass the bill on the 24th of January.
It's really interesting to see the different figures coming out. Of course, you've got the authorities stating what they believe the demonstration numbers to be, and then the unions. And of course, those figures are so far out that it throws discredit upon both entities. Thanks for that.
Right. Lastly, Paul, Ukraine expects the West to announce whether it will send modern tanks to Ukraine today. NATO members and other countries are meeting to see how they can support Ukraine and Germany.
Yeah, look, and this is a really weird situation because Germany said, look, if we're going to send our Leopard tanks, we'll only do so if America sends some of their Abraham tanks. The situation is a lot more complex than people make out. It's not just a matter of getting a tank, throwing a guy or a crew into it, and off they go to war. The logistics supply and the logistics capabilities incredibly complex. Not just for the ammunitions, but also for the mechanical supplies and the ability to recover tanks that break tracks or have engine issues. In the case of the Abrahams, that logistical complexity is very much amplified by the nature of the engine propulsion system that they utilize. So again, you have to ask the question, how many wars does America have to get involved in and lose before it realizes that warfare is a whole lot more than just technology and ammunitions? They seem to have never got their head fully around the importance of willpower and ingenuity. And that's not a criticism of the military forces themselves. The Marines, the Green Berets, American Navy, their Army, some brilliant soldiers, some brilliant units, brilliant special forces units, and some of the best logistical chains in the world. It's just that the politicians don't actually want to listen to their generals, and they politicize their generals and then don't heed what the generals say because the generals end up being subservient to the politicians' whims, which just aren't related to the reality and complexities of warfare. And it's with great sadness as a veteran myself that I say that, because so many soldiers are impacted and America's reputation is getting so hurt and damaged for what was a country that showed its industrial might could come into World War II and its soldiers could be so brilliant. But since then we've had Vietnam, Korea, the Second Desert War, a myriad. We could name another 15 complete and utter failures that politically they should have taken many other options before deciding to go to war and before not electing to take the right forces with the right combined arms and supporting logistics to war. Thanks for today's brief. Very good indeed. Is that the end of the brief?
Yes, it is, Paul. Thanks for your comments. Anything else from you?
No, but if you could stay on the line, that'd be great after this. Cheers.